The void between Kalari fringe outposts and the human core world stretched unbroken for 12 light-years, empty save for the faint, fading ion trail of the Kalari patrol frigate the Ardent had disabled 6 hours prior. 800 meters aft of the command deck, a burst transmitter buoy drifted, its antennae still pinging the outpost's comms array with looped footage of Kalari heavy armor crushing under human jury-rigged railgun fire. The outpost commander's panicked stand-down order looping on repeat across the encrypted channel. The bridge smelled of burnt coffee and recycled air, the low thrum of the Mark IV FTL drive's charge cycle vibrating through the deck plates under every boot. Captain Mara Halloway sat in the command chair, her knuckles white where she gripped the armrests, her voice steady as stone when she spoke. Rear sensor status, Javi. Tactical Officer Javi Voss didn't look up from his console, his fingers flying across the hail of sensor feeds. Outpost comms are dark, buoy signal holding 97% coverage across their local fleet net. Their long-range sensors are still pinged off the comet we used as cover for the assault, so they won't pick up our drive signature for another 11 minutes. Lead Intel Specialist Klez leaned forward in his adjacent station, tapping the screen displaying the outpost's unsecured net manifest he'd pulled before they bugged out. Their reinforcement dispatch has a 17-minute window before they pick up the buoy's signal and triangulate our exit vector. We're 42% through FTL charge per engineering. Engineering, give me 10% more charge, Halloway said, keying the comms channel. Keep core heat under 1200 Kelvin or we're melting the drive before we clear the jump point. Chief Engineer Rourke's gravelly voice crackled back a second later. Aye, Captain, but we're pushing the Mark IV 8% past rated specs. If we hit a dust cloud en route, shield emitters will blow before we clear it. No margin for error, Halloway's mouth tightened. The Kalari Empire had spent 70 years writing off human space as a backwater of primitive apes too stupid to surrender, too stubborn to die. They'd never expected the Ardent's crew to slip past 3 border patrols, disable a frigate, and force a fortified outpost to stand down without firing a single shot at the station itself. For 40 years, human forces had prepped for this exact fight, stockpiling railguns, jury-rigged stealth plating, and FTL drives tweaked to outrun Kalari pursuit craft. The Ardent was the first test of that prep, and it was holding. Reinforcements are 2 Kalari dreadnoughts, 4 cruisers, 12 fighter wings, Klez said, scrolling through the manifest. They'll be en route to our last known position in 72 hours, not 17. The buoy signal is bouncing off that comet. They'll waste 12 hours triangulating the false vector before they realize it's a dummy. That buys us 60 hours to get back to core, get the fleet mustered. Last intel packet we sent put Kalari invasion timelines at 10 years out, Halloway said. This changes that. Before Klez could respond, comms officer Leela Reyes looked up from her station, her jaw tight. Captain, I'm picking up a faint distress signal off the bow. Unregistered human transponder code. It's Scout 7, the craft we sent out 3 weeks ago to monitor the Kalari border. We wrote them off as lost when they stopped responding. Put it on screen. The main view screen flickered to life, showing a battered scout craft, hull scorched black in 3 places, drifting slightly off axis. A single Kalari fighter was tethered to its hull, its plasma cannons trained on the craft's airlock. A shaky human voice crackled over the open channel, breathless. Ardent, this is Scout 7. We've got a Kalari boarding party en route to our bridge. They found our sensor logs of the outpost assault. If they get that data, the entire Kalari fleet knows we're operating this far out. They'll be here before we can warn core. Halloway's hand dropped to the command chair's trigger, her voice sharp enough to cut steel. All hands, battle stations. Javi, target that fighter, hold fire until I say. Klez, purge all comms logs of our route, lock down the buoy's signal source. We're not leaving that crew to the Kalari, and we're not letting those boarders get a single bite of our plans. Chapter 2, Silent Shadows Against the Void. Humanity's stealth war with the alien Armada, ASF. The Ardent's bridge went silent except for the low hum of power cycling through weapon systems. The Kalari fighter clung to Scout 7's hull like a parasite, its boarding tube locked against the human craft's airlock. Range, Halloway asked, her voice clipped. 2,000 meters and closing, Javi replied, eyes locked on his targeting reticle. I can burn that fighter before they breach. Negative, Halloway snapped. If we slag it now, the Kalari will detonate the boarding tube and erase Scout 7's logs. We need those records intact. Klez leaned forward, his tone measured but urgent. Captain, if those logs confirm Kalari fleet movements, Core Command will finally believe our timeline collapse. That's leverage we can't afford to lose. Ray's console flared with static. Scout 7's crew is trying to jam the Kalari uplink. They're buying us seconds, not minutes. Halloway's jaw tightened. Then seconds are all we need. The Ardent's hull vibrated as maneuvering thrusters fired. The ship angled into a slow roll, presenting its stealth-shielded flank toward the Kalari fighter. The alien craft's sensors swept across the void, but the Ardent's profile remained ghosted, human stealth tech bending light and masking emissions in ways the Kalari still hadn't cracked. Boarding tube is hot, Reyes warned. Kalari breach in 30 seconds. Holloway stood, her voice carrying across the bridge. We're not here to trade fire. We're here to remind the Kalari that humanity doesn't play by their rules. Javi, prep a precision strike, disable, don't destroy. Reyes, piggyback their comms channel, I want to hear what they're saying. Static hissed, then a guttural alien voice cut through, sharp and disdainful. Human vessel, surrender your records. Resistance will result in annihilation. Kles smirked. Arrogant bastards think they're already writing our epitaph. Holloway's eyes narrowed. Let's prove them wrong. Scout 7's transmission flared again, the voice ragged but defiant. Ardent, they're cutting through the hatch. We've sealed bulkheads, but they'll reach the bridge in under a minute. If you're going to act now. Copy that, Holloway said. Hold your ground, we're moving. The Ardent surged forward, its thrusters whisper quiet compared to the Kalari's roaring plasma drives. Javi's finger hovered over the trigger. Target locked, he said. I can sever the boarding tube with a microburst. Risk is collateral damage to Scout 7's hull. Do it, Holloway ordered. A lance of coherent energy snapped across the void, slicing through the Kalari boarding tube like a scalpel. The tethered fighter jolted, its plasma cannons sputtering as the severed tube spun free, venting atmosphere into the black. Direct hit, Javi confirmed. Attempt neutralized, Rey's console chimed. Scout 7 reports Kalari breach team lost in decompression. Their bridge is secure for now. But the Kalari fighter wasn't retreating, its thrusters flared, dragging itself back into firing position. They're charging plasma, Javi warned. Next shot will gut Scout 7. Holloway's voice was ice. Then we take the shot first. The Ardent stealth cannons rotated, locking onto the Kalari craft. For a heartbeat, the void held its breath. Then the human ship fired 2 precision bursts that punched through the alien fighter's drive core. The Kalari vessel erupted in a silent bloom of fire, fragments scattering into the abyss. Target eliminated, Javi said, exhaling. Scout 7's captain came back on comms, voice trembling with relief. Ardent, you just saved our skins. We've still got the logs. Sending encrypted packet now. Rey's console lit with cascading data streams. Receiving captain, this is big. Kalari fleet deployments shifted forward by years. They're massing along the border, staging for a push into human space. Kles leaned back, his expression grim. So it's true, they're not waiting a decade. They're coming now. Holloway's gaze swept the bridge. Then humanity has 60 hours to prepare before the Kalari realize their outpost was a decoy. Scout 7's data gives us proof, but proof means nothing if we don't act. Reyes looked up, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. Captain, Corps Command won't believe us unless we deliver this packet ourselves. If we transmit, Kalari intercepts will flag it. We need to run it back physically. Which means, Kles added, we're about to sprint through Kalari-controlled space with their fleet mobilizing ahead of schedule. Holloway's lips curved into a thin, dangerous smile. Exactly. And we'll do it the way humanity always does, quiet, unseen, and lethal when provoked. The Ardent's engines whispered to life, pulling the ship into a new vector. Scout 7 limped alongside, its hull scarred but its crew alive. Escort formation, Holloway ordered. We're taking them home. Javi muttered under his breath, eyes on his console. Home S about to become a battlefield. Kles replied without looking away from his tactical display. Then let's make sure humanity writes the first chapter of that war, not the Kalari. The bridge fell into silence again, but it wasn't the silence of fear. It was the silence of shadows moving against the void, humanity's answer to an empire that thought itself untouchable. And in that silence, the war had already begun. The Ardent's hull thrummed as it slid into the iron wake of the gutted Kalari supply freighter, drifting 12,000 clicks astern, its burned-out transponder still broadcasting the stolen IFF code Holloway's team had pulled from the wreckage 3 hours prior. The freighter's inert mass masked their thermal signature, a thin, dirty trick against the Kalari sensor net stretching 8 light-years across the sector, but it was the only trick they had. Lieutenant Alara Voss's fingers flew over her sensor ops console, her eyes fixed on the passive sweep feed scrolling across her secondary display. 47 minutes out from the decoy outpost wreckage, 52 hours until the Kalari High Command clocked the outpost's missing scheduled check-in, and the first blip of trouble had already appeared. A Kalari patrol corvette, 82,000 clicks out on a vector cutting directly for their exit lane, its active sensors cycling every 14 seconds. Captain, she said, no inflection in her voice, just the flat tone of someone reporting a fact they'd already run 3 simulations on. Corvettes picked up a faint hull bleed from Scout 7's damaged sensor array. They're hailing on the open Kalari tactical band. On the bridge, Holloway didn't move for half a second, his gaze fixed on the Corvette's blip on the main tactical display. Signal strength, weak. They're 80 clicks out. They won't get a clear lock for another 6 minutes. But if they ping us again, they'll pick up the bleed from our own stealth emitters if we don't drop power to the lower decks. Holloway's jaw tightened. Route all non-essential power from decks 4 through 7 to the coding emitters. Drop life support by 2 degrees. Tell the crew it's temporary, no exceptions. He turned to Klez, who was already pulling up the Corvette's hull specs on his tactical console. Can we take it before they get a lock? Klez shook his head, his eyes never leaving his screen. Their point defense outclasses ours 3-1, and if we fire a single round, every Kalari patrol within 4 light years will get a weapon's signature ping. We don't have the ammo to fight through that, not with 52 hours on the clock. Reyes leaned forward, her fingers steepled on the console in front of her. We can spoof a false IFF. The supply freighter's transponder code is still fresh. We can splice it into our outgoing signal. Claim we're a long-range reconnaissance drone sent to survey the outpost wreckage after the attack, reporting a civilian transport fleeing the sector with stolen Kalari tech. They'll ask for authentication, Voss said, not looking up from her console. The transponder code is only half the handshake. We don't have the other half, not unless we pull it from the Corvette's own signal, and that'll take 10 minutes we don't have. Then we give them something else to look at, Klez said, his fingers flying across his console as he pulled up the munitions loadout for the Ardent's micromissile pods. I've got a low-yield micromissile locked and loaded. I can fire it at that debris field 12,000 clicks off our port bow, detonate it mid-flight to mimic the sensor signature of a civilian transport's main engine burst. The Corvette sensors will pick that up, assume the drone is reporting a live target, and veer off to investigate. Holloway nodded. Do it. Voss, splice the transponder code now, hold the handshake for 90 seconds. Klez, fire on my mark. Javi, keep Scout 7 tucked tight in our wake. No movement, no power surges, not even a single comms ping. If they spot that kid's ship before we get the Corvette off our tail, we're all dead. Voss's fingers moved so fast they blurred, splicing the stolen transponder code into the Ardent's outgoing signal. The Corvette's hails grew louder on the comms feed, the guttural Kalari tongue spitting out demands for identification, authentication, mission parameters. Holloway waited 3 seconds, then nodded. Klez fired. The micromissile screamed out of the pod, arcing toward the debris field, detonating 2 seconds later in a flash of orange plasma that exactly matched the sensor signature of a civilian transport's main engine firing up to jump to FTL. The Corvette's active sensors locked onto the blip immediately, its comms officer's angry shout cutting through the feed before the transmission cut out entirely, the Corvette veering hard toward the debris field, its sensors fixated on the fake target. Voss let out a quiet breath she didn't know she was holding, killing the spliced transponder signal. Trace holds for 12 hours, she said, her voice just a little quieter now. They'll be able to narrow our position down to a 12 light-year radius in 12 hours, not the 60 we had before. Their secondary sweep is going to hit 48 hours early. Holloway's lips thinned into that same thin, dangerous smile he'd worn on the bridge 20 minutes prior. Good, that means they won't see the punch coming. He turned to the comms officer at the back of the bridge, who was patching through to Scout 7's bridge. Tell Scout 7's captain we're clear. Tell him to keep his crew quiet, no comms, no external power, not even a light on the bridge. We're slipping into the Helix Nebula in 10, that'll mask our trail for another 30 hours. Javi's voice crackled over the comms a second later, rough, a little winded. Scout 7's hull's holding, but one of the outpost survivors is asking for you, says she has something you need to see. Holloway hesitated for half a second, then stepped off the bridge, heading for the Scout 7's docking collar. The airlock cycled, and he stepped into the Scout 7's cramped bridge, where a 19-year-old kid with a comms tech's insignia on her uniform was standing, holding a cracked data slate. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but her voice was steady when she spoke. This is the full sensor log from the outpost's long-range array. We picked it up 10 minutes before the Kalari hit. It shows their entire first-wave fleet, 127 capital ships, jumping into the Kalari border system 72 hours from now. They're not waiting for the decoy to be found. They're already on the move. Holloway took the data slate, his jaw tightening. The countdown just dropped another 8 hours, 44 hours left. He looked at the kid, who was twisting a frayed lanyard around her wrist, a photo of a little girl with pigtails tucked under the plastic. What's your name? Lyra. My sister's waiting for me on Luna. I told her I'd bring her a moon rock for her 10th birthday. She paused, then nodded at the data slate in his hand. Make sure that gets to Core Command so she doesn't have to grow up in a war zone. Holloway tucked the slate into his flight suit pocket, then tapped his comms. Raise, adjust the ETA to Core Command. We're going to hit the Helix Nebula jump point in 8 hours, not 10, and send a priority message to Luna's defense grid. Tell them to start mobilizing the civilian evacuation protocols now. The Kalari are coming 44 hours early. He stepped back into the airlock, cycling it shut behind him, and the Ardent's engines whined as it adjusted vector, the two ships slipping toward the nebula's hazy purple edge, the Kalari patrol corvette still chasing the ghost of a civilian transport 12,000 clicks away, unaware that humanity's first strike was already 8 hours closer than anyone had thought. The silence of the void wasn't quiet anymore. It was the sound of a shadow winding up to hit. Word count 987, Chapter 4, Silent Shadows against the void. The Ardent's hull vibrated with the subtle hum of its drive coils, a sound every spacer learned to ignore, but every commander listened to like a heartbeat. Holloway stood in the command pit, eyes locked on the tactical overlay. The Kalari fleet's projected vector pulsed in crimson arcs across the holographic sphere. 127 capital ships, each bristling with weapons designed to erase civilizations. 44 hours until they crossed the border system. 44 hours until humanity's fragile defenses were tested against an empire that had never known defeat. Status on the Helix jump point, Holloway asked, voice clipped. Reyes leaned over her console, fingers dancing across the interface. Stable, will reach insertion in 7 hours, 32 minutes. No Kalari patrols within sensor range. The corvette chasing the decoy is still burning hard, but they're blind to us. Good, keep it that way. The crew moved with a calm precision that belied the stakes. No wasted words, no nervous chatter. Humanity's survival depended on silence, on shadows slipping through the void unseen. Lyra sat strapped into the auxiliary station, her hands clenched around the frayed lanyard. She wasn't crew, not trained for this. But she had carried the slate, carried the intelligence that shaved 8 hours off the countdown. That made her part of the mission now, whether she wanted it or not. Holloway's comms crackled. Command, this is Ardent. We've confirmed Kalari fleet acceleration. 44 hours to border incursion. Requesting immediate core command relay. Static hissed, then a voice answered, calm but edged with urgency. Ardent relay received. Core command acknowledges. Luna defense grid mobilization underway. Civilian evacuation protocols initiated. Your orders remain. Intercept at Helix. Disrupt Kalari advance. Delay their arrival. Every hour you buy us is an hour for Earth to prepare. Holloway exhaled slowly. Understood. Ardent out. The tactical overlay shifted, new icons appearing, human fleet elements repositioning, defense grids spinning up, evacuation transports launching from Luna. It was a fragile web stretched thin across the void. Against the Kalari Armada, it looked like glass threads straining against a storm. Reyes glanced at him. We're not built to fight them head-on, you know that. I know. Holloway's jaw tightened. That's why we don't fight head-on. We fight in silence. We fight in shadows. They think they're hunting prey. We'll make them bleed before they even realize we're here. The words carried across the pit, steadying the crew. 7 hours later, the Ardent slid into the Helix Nebula's edge. Purple gas clouds swirled like phantom tides, masking sensor returns, scattering signals. Perfect cover for a stealth insertion. Jump point stabilized, Reyes reported. Coordinates locked, ready for transit. Holloway nodded. Initiate. The ship shuddered as the drive engaged, space folding around them in a ripple of distortion. The nebula's haze vanished, replaced by the cold clarity of the Kalari border system. Alarms chimed. Reyes' voice snapped sharp. Contact. Multiple Kalari patrol elements. Frigates picket line. They're screening the jump corridor. Holloway's eyes narrowed. They're learning. They know someone's coming. Orders, Reyes asked. Silent insertion. No weapons, no emissions. Drift us past their line. If they ping us, we ghost them. If they lock us, we burn them. The Ardent's engines throttled down, the ship sliding into a controlled drift. The void swallowed their presence, sensors masked by the nebula's residual scatter. Kalari frigates loomed in the distance, sleek predators bristling with weapons. Their patrol arcs overlapped, a net designed to catch intruders. Minutes stretched into hours. The crew held their breath, every console dimmed, every system throttled to minimum. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the faint pulse of the drive coils. Then ping. A Kalari sensor sweep brushed across their hull. Rey's hands tightened on her console. They're probing, not a lock yet. Holloway's voice was ice. Hold course, don't twitch. The sweep passed. The frigates shifted formation, their attention drawn elsewhere. The Ardent slipped through the net, unseen. Relief rippled across the pit, but Holloway didn't relax. He knew the Kalari weren't careless. They were arrogant, yes, but arrogance bred vigilance. They would tighten the net. They would adapt. Jump corridor clear, Reyes reported. We're inside the border system. Holloway straightened. Good, now we make them bleed. He tapped the comms. All units, this is Ardent. Begin shadow operations. Target their supply lines, their comm relays, their sensor buoys. No direct engagements. We cut their eyes, we cut their ears, we cut their throat before they even see us. Acknowledgements crackled back. Human strike craft, stealth frigates, recon drones, all moving into position. Silent shadows against the void. Lyra watched, wide-eyed, as icons flickered across the tactical overlay. Tiny human ships darting into Kalari territory, striking unseen, vanishing before retaliation could land. Supply convoys shredded, comm relays severed, sensor buoys blinking out one by one. The Kilari fleet slowed, confusion rippling through their formation. Their arrogance faltered, their advance disrupted. Reyes smiled grimly. We're buying Earth time. Holloway's gaze stayed locked on the Crimson Arcs. Time isn't enough. We need fear. We need them to doubt. If they think humanity is prey, they'll keep coming. If they think humanity is a predator, they'll hesitate. He leaned forward, voice low, steady. And hesitation is the weapon that wins wars. The void swallowed his words, but the crew heard them. Silent shadows moved, unseen and relentless, as humanity's first strike began. Word count, ~986, the Void Wasp's CIC smelled like recycled air and stale coffee, the only sound the low thrum of its stealth drive and Jax's quiet breath over the control stick. 30 seconds out from Kilari Supply Convoy 7 Alpha's last known vector, Mara's fingers flew across the weapon's console, locking two 100 kinetic penetrators onto the lead transport's drive housing. Ping confirmed, she said, voice flat. No escort point defense has a lock on us. We're clean. Fire. The recoil was negligible, the stealth drive swallowing the weapon's discharge signature before it could propagate 100 meters. On the tactical feed, the two rounds slammed into the transport's aft drive core 3 seconds later, a silent bloom of superheated plasma that flared across the void. The convoy's 4 escort corvettes spun their weapons arrays 180 degrees, but the Void Wasp was already bleeding speed into a pre-calculated micro-jump corridor, its signature vanishing before the first Kilari proximity alarm could blare. Rally point reached, Rourke said from the comms station, tapping his screen to confirm the ship's IFF ping dropped off all Kilari sensor nets. 0 pursuit pings, clean hit. Jax keyed the channel back to the Ardent. Void Wasp to Ardent. Convoy 7 Alpha is disabled. No follow-up required. 12 minutes later on the Ardent CIC, Lyra leaned over the tactical console, her fingers tracing the flickering red icons marking Kilari supply assets across the outer system. 17 convoys disabled in the last hour, 0 human losses. The Kilari main fleet had slowed to half sublight, their tight wedge formation loosening as escorts peeled off to respond to phantom raid reports. Reyes leaned against the nav console, grim. Their forward advance is stalled. They're not pushing for the colony world anymore. Holloway stood behind the command chair, his gaze fixed on the Crimson Fleet arcs plotting their slow drift. That's the crack. Now we widen it, a recon drone feed popped up on the main screen. A Kilari destroyer sensor bay, a junior officer pointing at a cluster of faint, unregistered pings near the system's outer debris field. Ghost contacts, the officer said, voice tight. Signature matches human stealth craft, sir. The XO slammed his fist on the console. Stop wasting my time with debris calibration errors. We have a ground invasion to support, not a sensor troubleshooting exercise. Dismissed. Holloway's jaw tightened. They're still writing us off as raiders, not a coordinated force. Before he could speak, a priority alert blared. The last active Kilari forward command buoy, positioned 200,000 clicks out from the colony they were preparing to invade, was still broadcasting fleet position and human defensive zone intel to their ground forces. As long as it was active, the Kilari ground troops would have real-time targeting data on every human bunker and battery. Target the buoy, Holloway said, no hesitation. Send the silent Shrike. Voss can take it out before they even know we're in range. Commander Voss's voice crackled back 2 seconds later, calm as stone. Silent Shrike to Ardent, we're inbound. ETA to buoy, 4 minutes. No survivors, no distress calls. You won't even know we were there. The Shrike drifted toward the buoy on 2% drive power, its hull coated in radar-absorbent polymer that cut its signature to less than a pebble floating in the void. The 2 Kilari corvettes patrolling the buoy's perimeter swept their sensors past it twice, their crews flagging the tiny energy spike from the Shrike's power core as solar interference from the system's G-type star. Voss fired a single micro-EMP warhead into the buoy's comms array from 50 clicks out. The array slagged in 0.2 seconds, the broadcast cutting out mid-transmission of a ground force deployment timetable. On the Ardent's tactical feed, the Kilari fleet's formation rippled again, this time harder. Their ground forces on the colony below went dark, cut off from command. The lead Kilari admiral ordered 3 destroyers to break formation and scout the outer system for the raider force, no escort, no backup. Holloway smiled, sharp and cold. Ambush set, Void Wasp, Raven Ghost, hit their port drive cores, leave them drifting. No distress calls, no survivors, let them wonder what's out there. Lyra watched the 3 human stealth crafts slip out of the debris field, invisible against the void, and felt the weight of what they were doing settle on her shoulders. The Kilari had come expecting to crush a primitive human outpost. Instead, they were walking into a kill zone they couldn't see, run by a force they refused to believe existed. Reyes' voice crackled over the comms, quiet and satisfied. First command buoy is dark, their fleet's blind in the outer system. They're not just confused anymore, sir, they're scared. Holloway didn't answer right away, his gaze fixed on the Kelari fleet's slow, disorganized drift. Good, fear makes them make mistakes. And every mistake they make is one less step they take toward Earth. Word count, 987, Chapter 6, Silent Shadows against the void. The three Kelari destroyers advanced into the outer system, their drives burning steady arcs of blue-white plasma. To them the void was empty, no signals, no threats, only the faint interference of the star. To the humans, it was a hunting ground. Inside the cockpit of the Void Wasp, Commander Reyes adjusted his neural link, the tactical overlay painting ghostly silhouettes of the Kelari ships. Targets locked, port drive cores exposed. They're running standard patrol formation, no counter-stealth. His voice was calm, clinical. Confirm, Holloway's reply came from the Ardent, clipped and precise. Execute in sequence. Raven first strike, Ghost follow-up, Wasp clean sweep, no chatter once you're hot. The Raven slid into position, its hull coated in adaptive metamaterial that bent starlight into nothingness. Lieutenant Voss's hands hovered over the firing controls. He exhaled once, then triggered the micro-EMP warhead. The weapon streaked invisible across the void, detonating against the Kelari destroyer's port drive. The alien ship convulsed, plasma venting in a violent spray, its formation staggered. Drive core crippled, Voss reported, voice steady. No distress beacon detected. Ghost moved next. Ra's craft glided along the debris shadow, her targeting reticle locking onto the second destroyer. She fired a pair of kinetic penetrators, each wrapped in stealth shrouds. They punched through the Kelari hull, rupturing coolant lines and shredding the reactor housing. The ship's lights flickered, then died. Second target neutralized, Lyra whispered, though her hands trembled. She forced them still. The third destroyer panicked, breaking formation, thrusters flaring erratically. Reyes smiled coldly. They're blind. Moving in, he launched a precision strike, a cluster of guided flechettes that tore into the exposed drive core. The Kelari vessel spun helplessly, its engines sputtering into silence. 3 ships gone in under 90 seconds, no alarms, no transmissions, only drifting wrecks silent against the void. On the Ardent's bridge, Holloway leaned forward, eyes narrowing at the tactical feed. Status, all 3 confirmed disabled, Reyes answered. No survivors, no signals. Holloway's jaw tightened. Good, let the Kelari wonder what phantom force stalks them. They'll waste time hunting shadows while we cut their command apart. Lyra's voice broke the silence, hesitant. Sir, they'll know something unnatural is happening. They'll adapt. Holloway turned, his gaze sharp. They can't adapt to ghosts they refuse to believe exist. Their arrogance is our shield. As long as they think humanity is incapable, they'll keep walking into traps. The Ardent's tactical AI pulsed new data across the feed. The Kelari fleet was shifting again, their central command issuing frantic course corrections. Without the destroyers, their perimeter was fractured. Admiral Kelari Command is pulling back scouts, Reyes noted. They're consolidating. Looks like they're preparing for a blind sweep of the system. Holloway studied the patterns, his mind calculating. They'll spread thin, that's when we strike their carriers. Cut their fighter wings before they can deploy. Silence hung heavy for a moment. Lyra finally spoke, her voice low. Sir, if we cripple their carriers, the colony below survives, but if they realize it's us humans, they'll escalate. They'll bring reinforcements from the core worlds. Holloway's expression hardened. Then we make sure they never realize. Every wreck we leave must look like an accident, a malfunction, a ghost in the void. No survivors, no evidence, only fear. The crew absorbed his words, the weight of them pressing against their chests. Humanity's war was not fought with fleets or armies. It was fought with silence, deception, and shadows. Reyes broke the tension. Void Wasp ready for next strike, coordinates locked on carrier group. Holloway nodded once. Proceed. Silent war, gentlemen, silent war. The stealth craft vanished again into the black, leaving the Ardent alone in the drifting wreckage. The Kelari fleet, proud and arrogant, had no idea that humanity's hunters were already inside their perimeter, dismantling them piece by piece. And somewhere deep in the void, the shadows waited for their next kill. Word count, 946, the Void Wasp slipped through the sensor haze like a sliver of ice in a furnace. Its adaptive skin drank the stray photons, rendering the craft invisible to the Kelari's active sweeps. Inside, the cockpit lights were dimmed to a deep violet, enough for the crew to read their displays without betraying their position to any stray scanner. 3 clicks to marker, Reyes said, voice low but steady. His fingers hovered over the thrust vector controls, ready to nudge the craft onto the exact vector that would place them within the carrier's defensive envelope without triggering the proximity alarms. Holloway's eyes flicked between the tactical overlay and the feed from the external LiDAR. The carrier group hung in the void like a steel halo, 3 leviathans, each bristling with launch bays, shield generators, and a swarm of fighter drones that pulsed like angry fireflies around their hulls. Between them, smaller frigates drifted in loose formation, their sensors scanning outward, searching for the phantom that had already picked off two of their scouts. Shield harmonics at 73%, Lyra reported, her gaze fixed on the power readout. If we hit the main reactor vent on the lead carrier, we can cause a cascade failure. The secondary shields will flicker, but the primary will hold long enough for us to slip out. Holloway nodded. We'll need a clean entry. No debris, no signature. Use the microfracture pulse to cut the vent housing, then plant the charge. Timing is critical, 2 seconds between pulse and detonation. Any longer and the shields will auto-compensate. Rays adjusted the ship's attitude, aligning the nose with the faint thermal bloom leaking from the carrier's vent shaft. The Wasp's thrusters whispered, sending microbursts of ionized gas that pushed the craft forward without generating a detectable wake. Locking on, Rays said. A soft tone sounded in his ear as the targeting laser found the vent's lip, a jagged circle of alloy barely half a meter across. He depressed the trigger. A narrow beam of coherent plasma lanced out, striking the vent's edge. The metal sang a high-pitched whine as the pulse vaporized a thin layer, creating a microfracture that spider webbed across the housing. The fracture widened just enough for a slim munition to slip through. Charge away, Lyra said, releasing a small, cylindrical device from the Wasp's bay. It coasted on inertia, guided by a micro-thruster that kept it centered in the fracture. The charge's outer shell was coated in a polymer that matched the carrier's hull signature, making it invisible to active scans until impact. The charge struck the inner wall of the vent with a muted thump. A soft glow flared inside the fracture as the detonator engaged. For a heartbeat, nothing happened, then the vent's internal pressure ruptured. A jet of superheated plasma burst outward, striking the carrier's reactor coolant lines. Alarms blared inside the carrier's command dome, but the sound was muffled by the thick armor plating. The coolant lines ruptured, spraying radioactive fluid into the reactor chamber. The reaction spiked, then faltered as the coolant loss caused a localized meltdown. Holloway watched the readout spike. Reactor output dropped 18% in 0.4 seconds, then began a rapid decline as the automatic scram engaged. The carrier's shields flickered, their frequency shifting as the power grid struggled to compensate. Secondary shields holding at 42%, Lyra said. Primary dropping, we have a window. Rays nudged the Wasp's thrusters upward, pushing the craft clear of the vent's expanding plasma plume. The carrier's fighter drones, sensing the disturbance, began to scramble, their nacelles flaring as they spun up. But the sudden loss of power caused a lag in their launch sequences. Pre-flight checks stalled and the drones hung in their bays, inert. Now, Holloway said, voice flat, hit the comms array. Lyra switched the Wasp's payload to a high-frequency burst transmitter, a device designed to overload enemy communication nodes with a burst of encrypted noise. She aimed at the carrier's dorsal array, a sprawling lattice of antennae that fed the fleet's battle net. The burst fired a tight pulse of energy that slammed into the array. The carrier's internal comms sputtered, then went silent as the noise flooded the receivers, drowning out all coherent signals. For the next 12 seconds, the carrier was deaf, blind to its own fleet's commands. Outside, the frigates began to close, their captains likely interpreting the sudden silence as a threat. Their weapons locked onto the source of the disturbance, nothing but empty space where the Wasp had been a heartbeat ago. Rays fired a final salvo of micro-missiles, not to destroy but to scatter. The missiles detonated in a controlled burst of chaff and decoy flares, creating a false signature that drifted toward the carrier's port side. The frigate commanders, seeing the flare cloud, altered course to intercept, pulling their formation away from the carrier's vulnerable stern. Pull back, Holloway ordered. We're clear. The Wasp's thrusters flared, pushing the craft away from the carrier at a fraction of light speed. Behind them, the carrier's reactor continued to sputter, its output dropping further as the meltdown spread. Secondary systems kicked in, trying to isolate the failing core, but the damage was already cascading. On the bridge of the lead carrier, a Kilari officer slammed his fist onto the console. Report, what the hell happened? A junior officer's voice crackled through the ruined comms, distorted by the noise burst. Reactor vent breach, power falling, shields fluctuating. The officer's eyes narrowed. Sound the alarm, prepare for emergency shutdown, all fighters stand by. But the order never reached the fighter pilots, their consoles were dead, their screens blank. In the hangars, technicians scrambled, unaware that the cause was not a mechanical fault, but a precision strike from a ship that had vanished as silently as it had appeared. The second carrier in the group, seeing its sister's distress, began to turn its bow to present a stronger shield profile. Its own scanners, still functional, picked up a faint anomalous reading, an echo of the Wasp's drive signature but too brief to lock onto. The captain dismissed it as sensor ghost, a common occurrence in the dense debris fields near the asteroid belt. The frigates, now scattered, attempted to regroup. Their captains exchanged terse bursts of laser comms, hoping to re-establish contact. The noise bursts still lingered in the band, garbling their attempts. Frustration grew, orders were misread, formations became uneven. Holloway watched the tactical display from the Wasp's aft sensor suite. The carrier group's cohesion was fraying. The lead carrier's power readout showed a steady decline, projecting a total shutdown within 3 minutes if the meltdown wasn't contained. The second carrier's shields were holding, but its fighter complement remained grounded, waiting for a command that would never come. "They're blind," Lyra murmured. "No comms, no launch, no coordination." Rays kept the Wasp on a vector that would take them clear of the system's gravitational well, aiming for the pre-designated rendezvous point with the Ardent. "We've got what we came for." "Time to go." Holloway stared at the fading blips of the Kelari fleet. The arrogance of their commanders was evident in the way they had left their carriers exposed, trusting their overwhelming firepower to deter any threat. He felt no triumph, only the cold certainty that the war was being fought in the spaces between detection and reaction. The Void Wasp's engine sang a final note as it slipped into the dark, leaving behind a dying carrier, a crippled fleet, and a silence that would echo through the Kelari command for cycles to come. Somewhere deep in the void, the hunters waited for the next opening, ready to strike again, unseen, unheard, and utterly lethal. Chapter 8: Silent shadows against the void. The Ardent loomed ahead, a dark silhouette against the fractured starfield. Its hull bore the scars of recent combat, scorched plating, jagged rents sealed by emergency nanite foam, but the carrier still radiated menace. Rays guided the Void Wasp into formation, the stealth frigate's profile vanishing into the Ardent's sensor shadow. "Docking corridor aligned," Lyra reported, her voice clipped, precise. "No comms bleed detected. We're clean." Holloway leaned closer to the tactical display. The Kelari fleet was unraveling in the distance, their carriers crippled, their command net shredded, yet arrogance lingered in their formations. Even blind, they held position, unwilling to retreat, unwilling to admit vulnerability. That pride was their weakness and humanity's weapon. The Ardent's commander, Admiral Kalen, appeared on the encrypted hololink. His face was drawn, eyes sharp. "Report." Rays didn't waste words. "Target carriers neutralized, command net fractured, Wasp is intact." Kalen's gaze flicked to Holloway. "Assessment." Holloway spoke with the same calm that unnerved even his own crew. "The Kelari underestimated us. They assumed brute force would compensate for exposed carriers. Their arrogance blinded them. They'll recover, but not quickly. Their doctrine is brittle." "We exploit that brittleness." Kalen nodded once. "Then we press. The Ardent will advance. Wasp remains shadowed. You'll strike again when they attempt to regroup." The hollow dissolved. Silence filled the cabin, broken only by the hum of the Wasp systems. Lyra exhaled. "They'll adapt. They're not fools. Pride doesn't mean stupidity." Holloway's eyes stayed on the fading blips. "Adaptation requires time. We deny them that. Every cycle we cut deeper, every silence we leave behind corrodes their command. They'll start doubting their own sensors, their own orders. Doubt is lethal." Rays adjusted their vector, sliding the Wasp deeper into the Ardent's shadow. "Then we keep them doubting." The Kelari response came sooner than expected. A surge of energy rippled across the tactical grid, an emergency broadcast, raw and unencrypted. The alien language spilled through the static, harsh and guttural, but the meaning was clear, a rallying call. "They're trying to reassert control," Lyra said, broadcasting blind, hoping someone listens. Holloway's lips tightened. "Desperation. They're bleeding authority into the void." The Ardent's batteries opened fire, lances of plasma carving through the dark. The Kelari ships staggered, their formations breaking further. Yet one carrier, half dead and burning, began to pivot, its engines flaring weakly. "They're maneuvering," Rays muttered, trying to shield the crippled carrier. Holloway's voice was cold steel. "They think protection restores command. It doesn't, it paints a target." The Wasp's stealth systems whispered into life. Hull temperature dropped, emissions folded into silence. Rays guided the frigate along a vector that would intersect the carrier's flank. "Target lock established," Lyra confirmed. "No detection, they're blind." Holloway gave the order without hesitation. "Release." The Wasp's payload detached, microscopic drones, invisible to standard sensors, drifting like dust motes across the void. They latched onto the carrier's hull, burrowing into its systems. Within seconds, the Kelari vessel's power grid flickered, then collapsed. On the tactical display, the carrier's icon dimmed, then vanished. Rays allowed himself a rare smile. One more silence, but the Kelari fleet did not scatter. Instead, their remaining ships tightened formation, shields overlapping, weapons angled outward, a defensive shell. "They're learning," Lyra said quietly. "Not fast enough, but they're learning." Holloway studied the display. "A shell without a core collapses. They're protecting nothing. Their doctrine demands a center, a command. Without it, they're just ships in orbit. We'll break them piece by piece." The Ardent surged forward, its fighter wings finally unleashed. Sleek interceptors poured from its bays, weaving through the void with lethal precision. The The Kelari fired wildly, plasma bolts scattering across empty space, striking nothing. Rays kept the Wasp hidden, waiting. We strike again, Holloway shook his head. Not yet, let them bleed against the Ardent. We wait for the moment when their desperation peaks, then we cut the throat. The battle unfolded in silence. Human fighters darted through the Kelari shell, carving holes, sowing chaos. The aliens fought back with fury, but their cohesion was gone. Every command contradicted the last, every maneuver clashed with another. And through it all the Wasp remained unseen, a shadow against the void. Hours passed. The Kelari fleet dwindled, their arrogance stripped bare. Finally, a single transmission pierced the static, a surrender code, raw and bitter. Lyra stared at the display. They're yielding, Ray's frowned. Kelari don't surrender. Holloway's voice was colder than the void itself. They don't, which means this isn't surrender, it's bait. The Ardent's comms officer confirmed it. Signal originates from a damaged cruiser. Power readings inconsistent. Possible trap. Kalen's voice cut through the channel. Wasp, investigate. Confirm intent. Rays guided the frigate forward, stealth systems humming. The cruiser loomed ahead, its hull fractured, its lights flickering. The surrender code repeated, insistent. Lyra's sensors probed the wreck. No life signs, no command signals, just the broadcast. Holloway's eyes narrowed. Automated, they want us close. A sudden surge of energy flared from the cruiser's core. Trap, Lyra shouted. Rays yanked the Wasp aside as the cruiser detonated, a wave of plasma ripping through the void. The Ardent's shields flared, absorbing the blast, but several fighters vanished in the fire. Silence followed. Holloway's voice was calm, unshaken. They've learned one lesson. But not enough. They still think we fight in the light. They don't understand we are shadows, and shadows don't burn. The Wasp slipped back into the dark, leaving behind wreckage, silence, and the echo of a war fought in whispers. The Kelari had tried to bait humanity into the open. They had failed, and now in the void between stars, the hunters waited for the next arrogance to expose itself. Unseen, unheard, utterly lethal. Chapter 9, Silent Shadows. Against the void the wreckage drifted, cooling plasma trails fading into the abyss. Rays steadied the Wasp's controls, jaw tight, eyes locked on the tactical overlay. The Kelari trap had cost them fighters, good pilots, gone in a flash. But the silence afterward was worse. Silence meant the enemy was watching, waiting. On the Ardent's command deck, Kalen stood like a statue, hands clasped behind his back. They're probing, testing our reflexes. They want us to reveal doctrine. Holloway's reply was clipped, precise. Doctrine is irrelevant. Shadows don't have doctrine. Shadows adapt. Lyra's sensor feed pulsed across the hollow table. Residual energy signatures, multiple vectors. Kelari strike wings, cloaked. They're circling the blast zone, expecting us to regroup. Kalen's gaze hardened. They think we'll cluster. They think we'll mourn. Rays, break pattern, scatter formation. Make them chase ghosts, Rays acknowledged, voice steady despite the adrenaline still burning in his veins. Copy, Wasp shifting to phantom weave. The frigate's stealth drives whispered into overdrive, hull temperature dropping, profile dissolving into the void. The Kelari strike wings emerged, sleek predator craft bristling with weapons. Their formation was arrogant, tight, disciplined, assuming superiority. They swept toward the wreckage, sensors probing for survivors. Holloway's tone was surgical. They're blind to the dark, they expect light, give them nothing. Rays angled the Wasp into the debris field, weaving between fractured hulls. His crew worked in silence, every motion rehearsed, every breath measured. Lyra's voice cut through the calm. Target lock achieved. Kelari wing leader, Vector 9, vulnerable. Kalen's order was immediate. Strike, one shot, no trail. The Wasp's railgun whispered, a single slug tearing through the void. It punched cleanly into the Kelari wing leader's cockpit. No explosion, no flare, just silence as the craft drifted lifeless, its formation fracturing in confusion. The Kelari pilots scattered, their discipline unraveling. They fired blindly into the wreckage, plasma bolts carving empty space. Rays smirked, cold and sharp. They're panicking. They don't know where the shadows are. Holloway's voice was iron. Maintain silence, let them bleed themselves dry. Minutes stretched. The Kelari fired, maneuvered, searched. Every wasted shot revealed their desperation. Every erratic movement betrayed their fear. Humanity's ships remained unseen, their presence felt only in the growing dread of the enemy. Then a Kelari cruiser surged into the battle space, its hull gleaming with arrogance. It broadcast across open channels, voice dripping with contempt. Human ghosts come into the light, face us with honor. Kalen's reply was a whisper, transmitted only to his fleet. Honor is for the living. Shadows are for the dead. Rays lined up another shot, this time at the cruiser's sensor array. The slug ripped through its dish, severing its vision. The Kelari ship flailed, blind and furious, firing in every direction. Lyra's hands danced across her console. Cruiser's comms destabilized, they're broadcasting distress, their own wings are confused. Kalen's command was final, collapse the net, silent strike, leave nothing. The Ardent and its escorts emerged from the void in coordinated precision. Railguns whispered, torpedoes glided. No flares, no wasted fire, only surgical destruction. Kalari fighters vanished one by one, their arrogance shredded by shadows they could not see. The cruiser tried to retreat, engines flaring. Rays guided the Wasp beneath its hull close enough to see the alien plating shimmer. He fired a single torpedo into its reactor seam. The detonation was contained, surgical, splitting the ship in half without spectacle. Silence reclaimed the void. On the Ardent's deck, Kalen exhaled slowly. Lesson delivered, they baited shadows. Shadows consumed them. Holloway's gaze was cold steel. They'll adapt, they'll try again. But every time they reach into the dark, they'll lose fingers. Rays leaned back in his chair, eyes scanning the fading wreckage. They wanted us in the light. Instead, they drowned in the dark. Lyra's sensors confirmed the battle space clear. No survivors, no pursuit, just silence. Kalen's voice carried across the fleet. Remember this moment. The Kalari believed themselves eternal. Tonight, eternity bled, and shadows do not forget. The human fleet slipped back into stealth, vanishing into the void. The wreckage drifted, silent testimony to war fought without banners, without mercy. Humanity had struck unseen and unheard, and the arrogant empire had learned another lesson. In the endless dark, shadows are the only truth. The Kalari command vessel Vera's resolve hung motionless 12,000 clicks outside the debris field, its long-range sensors sweeping the same empty patch of void where 3 fighter wings and a light cruiser had ceased to exist 37 minutes prior. High Exarch Vorath stood on the bridge's upper tier, his silver carapace armor streaked with the faint ash of his tactical officer's burnt console, and did not speak. No bursts, no thermal exhaust, no drive signatures, Sub-Exarch Rin said, her voice tight. She jabbed a claw at the main display, where the last recorded feed from the light cruiser's forward sensors showed nothing but Starfield right up until the railgun round punched through its forward hull. They were on top of us before our passive arrays could pick up a single readout. We lost 17 pilots and 120 crew before anyone knew we were under attack. Vorath's mandibles clicked, a sound the bridge crew knew meant he was one sharp word from ordering the entire sector glassed. The bait operation was your design, Rin. You assured me the humans would take the hook, would expose themselves to our long-range batteries. They did not take the hook, Rin snapped before catching herself and bowing her head. They dismantled the hook, the line, and the hand holding it. The cruiser's reactor seam was struck with a single torpedo, exact placement, no overpenetration. That weakness is only listed in 3 command-level access logs, all of which are encrypted to biometric key. A cold prickle ran down Vorath's spine. The humans had not just ambushed his patrol. They had pulled the access logs from a dead officer's implant, or worse, from a live source embedded in his command structure. Keep the fleet for infiltrators, now, and pull the hunter-killer swarm from reserve, launch all 12 frigates, set them to sweep the sector on a vector that will intercept the humans' most likely withdrawal route. If they are hiding in the dark, we will drag them into the light and burn them out. On the Ardent CIC, the mood was taut, no triumph, only cold calculation. Lyra's fingers flew across her sensor console, her face tight. Kalari fleet is launching 12 hunter-killer frigates. Drive signature matches the reserve stock we tagged at their last major shipyard. ETA to our projected withdrawal vector, 47 minutes. If we stay on course, they'll catch us in stealth. If we break stealth to adjust, they'll lock our signature and bring the entire Armada down on us within 72 hours. Kalen leaned forward, his jaw tight. Options. Rays didn't hesitate. Wasp, 2 micro-stealth drones. I can take the lead frigate's guidance core out first, then plant charges on the rest as I drift through the formation. No explosions, no burst big enough to ping their long-range arrays. The swarm goes dead, no trace we were there. Holloway was shaking his head before Rays finished speaking. That's a one-way trip if the swarm's passive arrays pick up your drive signature. You'll be surrounded by 12 frigates with enough firepower to glass a colony world. We don't have a choice, Rays said, already unbuckling from his chair. If those frigates get back to their command with date on our stealth footprint, every human outpost in the outer rim is gone. Jax is already prepping the Wasp. We launch in 2 minutes. Kalen held his gaze for 3 seconds, then nodded. Do not get caught. If you have to blow the Wasp to avoid capture, you do it. No exceptions. Rays saluted, sharp, no wasted motion, and turned for the hangar bay. 10 minutes later, the Wasp slipped out of the Ardent secondary hangar. No running lights, no engine flare, its hull coated in the same radar-absorbent polymer that made the rest of the fleet invisible. His co-pilot Jax, 22, fresh out of flight school, white-knuckled the armrest of his seat, his voice steady only because he'd practiced it 100 times in sims. Swarm formation is in sight, 12 frigates, spaced 200 clicks apart, passive arrays on full sweep. They haven't picked us up yet. Good, Rays said, nudging the Wasp's cold drive to a speed that matched the swarm's drift, no excess thrust. First frigate's guidance core is on the leading edge, port side. I'm taking us in close. When I give the word, you launch the drone, set the charge, and pull back. No finesse, no heroics, just get it done. Jax nodded, and the Wasp glided toward the first frigate's dark hull, so close Rays could see the faint scratch marks on its plating from earlier skirmishes. He held his breath until the drone's charge planted with a soft, almost imperceptible click, then pulled the Wasp back, drifting toward the next frigate before the first's core went dark. By the time the 12th charge planted, the lead frigate of the swarm had gone completely dead, its drive sputtering out, drifting off course. The rest followed in sequence, 30 seconds apart, no alarms, no warning pings, no signatures big enough to ping even the closest Kalari patrol ship. Jax let out a breath he'd been holding for 20 minutes. All cores fried, swarm is dead in the water, no one saw us. Rays shook his head, glancing back at the drifting, lifeless frigates, then at the distant streak of the Ardent stealth fleet, already moving to pick them up. They saw us, they just don't know how close we got. Now they know the dark doesn't just hide us. It bites. Back on the Vera's resolve, Voreth stared at the main display, where 12 previously active hunter-killer signatures had vanished in the span of 3 minutes. No explosions, no enemy fire, no trace. Rin stood at his side, her voice quiet. The humans are not raiding our borders, Exarch. They are hunting us. Voreth said nothing, his mandibles clicking so fast they made a faint, harsh hum. Somewhere in the back of his mind, for the first time in his 120 years of command, he felt the cold, unfamiliar weight of fear. The void was not his, it never had been. Chapter 11, Silent Shadows. Against the void, the Kalari fleet hung in formation, a lattice of silvered hulls glinting against the black. Their discipline was flawless, their arrogance palpable. 12 frigates gone without a trace had rattled them, but Voreth's command still pulsed with the certainty of empire. They believed the void was theirs to patrol, theirs to dominate. They were wrong. From the Ardent stealth bay, Jax watched the tactical overlay bloom with ghost signatures. Human infiltration drones, wasps, slid through the dark like whispers, their drives tuned to emit less than the background hum of cosmic radiation. He could see the Kalari patrols sweeping arcs, their sensors probing, but every sweep passed harmlessly through the shadows. Targets locked, Rays said, voice clipped, steady. We're inside their perimeter, they don't even know the perimeter's gone. Commander Hale's voice cut across the comms, calm as ever. Proceed, no alarms, no theatrics, we're not here to fight, we're here to erase. The wasps moved. Each drone carried a charge no larger than a human fist, but tuned to destabilize Kalari cores with surgical precision. Jax guided his swarm toward the nearest cruiser, its hull bristling with weapons that would never fire if the charge planted clean. Inside the Kalari flagship, Voreth's mandibles clicked in agitation. Report, he demanded. Rin's voice was low, almost reverent. Exarch, 12 hunter-killers gone, now silence across the patrol net. The humans are inside our lattice. Voreth's claws flexed. Impossible, no vessel breaches Kalari screens, but the tactical display betrayed him. One by one, faint drive signatures winked out, not destroyed, not attacked, simply gone. On the Ardent, Rays exhaled, cruiser cores collapsing. They'll drift blind in 10 minutes. Jax's hands were steady, his breathing measured. He had planted charges in silence before, but never against cruisers this size. The void pressed in heavy, endless, but he felt none of it, only the rhythm of the hunt. Next wave, Hale ordered. Voreth will think we're ghosts, let him. The wasps darted again, slipping past Kalari escorts. Their hulls bore scars from centuries of war, but none prepared them for this. An enemy that did not fire, did not announce itself, did not even exist on their sensors. Inside the Kalari flagship, panic rippled through the crew. Exarch, our cruisers are failing. No alarms. No breaches, systems simply die. Voreth's mandibles stilled, fear sharp and alien coiled in his chest. The humans, he whispered, hunt us as predators, not warriors, predators. Rin's eyes flicked to him. They are not fighting for territory, they are dismantling us. The void swallowed another cruiser, its lights dimmed, its drives sputtered, its weapons froze, no explosion, no wreckage, just silence. On the Ardent, Hale's voice was calm, surgical. Voreth will feel the dark closing. He will know the void is not his, it never was. Jax guided the final wasp into position. The charge clicked into place, a sound so faint it was swallowed by the hum of his suit. He pulled back, drifting into shadow. Last cruiser dead, Rays confirmed. Fleet lattice collapsed, they're blind, deaf, and drifting. Silence filled the comms, not relief, not triumph. Just the cold recognition of what they had done. Voreth stared at the tactical display where his fleet had once glowed bright. Now only faint husks remained, drifting aimlessly. His claws trembled. For the first time in his long command, he felt hunted. The humans, he said, voice breaking, are shadows against the void, and shadows bite. On the Ardent, Hale turned from the display. Phase complete, extraction in 5, no alarms, no survivors who understand what happened. Jax closed his eyes, the image of drifting Kalari cruisers burned into his mind. Humanity had not fought tonight. Humanity had erased. The void was no longer Kalari territory. It was human hunting ground. And Voreth knew it. The silence stretched heavy, final. The war was no longer about fleets clashing in fire. It It was about shadows moving unseen, dismantling empires piece by piece. Humanity had become the predator. Vorath's empire had become the prey. And the void itself had chosen sides. The Ardent's hull thrummed as it cleared the Kilari outer sensor perimeter, frost spiderwebbing across the viewport where the stealth drive's coolant vented into the vacuum. 12 light minutes out, the 47-ship Kilari 3rd Patrol Fleet had occupied this exact patch of void 92 minutes prior. Now, there was no wreckage, no distress signal pings, no trace of the 1,200 crew who'd manned those cruisers. Just silence thick and absolute, stretching to the edge of the Kilari inner system. On the bridge, Ray's fingers flew across her console, the soft clack of her datapad the only sound aside from the drive hum. No residual energy signatures, no comms relay pings, no long-range scanner hits. The Kilari won't pick up anything out of the ordinary for at least 48 hours, assuming they don't send a follow-up patrol to check in on the 3rd. She didn't look up, her tone flat, no trace of the triumph most crews would carry after a perfect op. Hale leaned back in his command chair, tapping a final entry into the mission log. Good. Mark all demolition charge timers as confirmed detonated. No leftover assets, no identifiable hardware. We don't leave them anything to trace back to Sol Command. He paused, then added, quieter, extraction window closes in 90 seconds. All WASP pilots confirm dock status. Jax's voice crackled over the comms, thin and steady, the faint wheeze of his suit's life support under it. WASP 7-1 dock, clamps secure. Charge loadout jettisoned, no residual material on the hull, ready for FTL. He pulled off his helmet as the airlock cycled, the smell of recycled suit air and burnt charge residue clinging to his flight suit. He glanced at the viewport one last time, at the faint, fading afterglow of the demolition blasts that had swallowed the Kilari cruiser's whole, leaving nothing behind. No twisted hulls, no floating debris, no bodies, just the void, exactly as it had been before the Kilari had claimed it as their own. 12 light minutes away, Vorath's command cutter drifted in the exact spot where his flagship had been 90 minutes prior. The red alert strobe had been flashing for 17 minutes, painting the dead bodies of his first officer and comms laid in flickering crimson. His claws were dug so deep into the armrest of his command chair that the polymer had cracked under the pressure. His tactical display was blank, every sensor ping silenced, every long-range transmitter dead. He'd fired 3 emergency distress signals in the first 10 minutes after the fleet vanished. Not a single one had gotten a response. He stared at the empty space where 47 capital ships had been, his throat tight. For 17 years he'd commanded the 3rd Patrol, never lost a single vessel, never failed a single objective. He'd laughed at the human comms intercept 3 weeks prior, the faint, calm voice that had said, "We do not fight your fleets, we erase your ability to field them." He thought it was a joke, a desperate bluff from a species that had spent centuries hiding in the Sol system. Now he knew better, the humans hadn't come to fight a battle. They'd come to erase the Kilari presence from this entire sector, to leave no proof, no witnesses, no way for the Kilari High Command to even know what had happened until it was too late. They turned the void itself into a weapon, turned silence into a threat that would haunt every Kilari sailor for the rest of their lives. The Ardent's FTL drive spooled up, a low hum that vibrated through the hull. Hale's voice came over the comms, terse, no room for argument. FTL engaged in 10 seconds. Comms blackout active until we clear the Kilari outer perimeter. No one speaks unless it's a hull breach or a reactor leak. Jax strapped himself into his crash couch, his eyes fixed on the viewport as the stars stretched into streaks, then vanished entirely. He didn't feel triumph, didn't feel the rush of victory most soldiers carried home from a battle. He just felt the cold weight of what they'd done. They'd proven that the void didn't belong to the Empire with the biggest guns. It belonged to the shadow that moved unseen, the one that left no wreckage, the one that turned silence into a weapon that would break the Kilari Empire long before the first shot was ever fired again. In the empty void, Vorath's cutter drifted, its life support ticking down by the minute. He stared out at the dark, the words of the human transmission echoing in his head. For the first time in his life, he was afraid of the silence.